precision analysis for the precision athlete, how to increase athletic preparation and performance through dropping dots. I'm Jared Van. That's Kirk Kirby. We're
Hey
hailing.
guys,
Oh,
how are
we got
you?
a.
I'm making sure that I'm so happy to be here and of course repping my hometown Philadelphia Phillies as we try to go up 2 games to 1 against those sorry Atlanta Braves. I hope I
And
didn't offend any Atlanta Brave fans out there.
I'm repping the Warriors. That's the one team I care about. The Warriors and my little brother. Um, we have a raised hand. If you can ask your question in the Q&A, that would be great. I will go back to this if not everybody has been able to take a snapshot. We're hailing from Team ABA and ABA University. And we are here to help y'all become precision athletes and precision coaches. So before we really get into the weeds of what that is, we got to talk about what is precision teaching. And it's a system of precise measurement and decision making to help change the trajectory of behavior. And we use a set of measurement procedures for monitoring behavior and making decisions about the effectiveness of any teaching technique, curricular methodology, or behavioral intervention or coaching. So we're going to be talking about how this can be used with sports performance, and we involve both direct and continuous observation and measurement of social, emotional, or academic behavior typically. But today we're going to be talking about how that pertains, like I said, to sports performance. So like we said, it's about measuring the quality of instruction and coaching intervention using the standard acceleration chart and making rapid data-based decisions. Precision teaching can be applied to almost any instructional program or intervention and shows the rate with which learning occurs. And there are 4 guiding principles and there are 4 steps. The 4 steps are pinpoint, record, change, and try again, which we're going to be talking about what that looks like through coaching sports performance. And also the 4 guiding principles are the learner knows best, only use observable behavior, measure behavior using frequency, and chart data on the standard acceleration chart. And like I said, we're going to be talking about what that looks like in athletic performance. So while a lot of people only think of precision teaching being used with academics, it's also been used in fine and gross motor skills, sports training, music education, animal training, healthcare training, parent and home education, business and sales training, private thoughts and feelings, applied behavior analysis, and more. And then what we really need to make sure that we do, especially with sports performance, is we need to describe behavior precisely, because a lot of times there's ambiguous descriptions of behavior, which can cause confusion between the coaches, the athletes, and even the people who are just general watchers of the sport. And precise descriptions set clear expectations so we know what are the goals, what are the objectives, how can we gain fluency, and what does that look like. It also helps everybody stay involved on the same page.
So
So,
really quickly, and kind of to piggyback on that, Jared, just kind of talking about why it's so important to identify specific behaviors, and just just to kind of preference Team ABA is a behavior analytics sport health and fitness training organization that uses the system of precision teaching uh, to work with our athletes and or our regular everyday people who are trying to stay healthy, live a healthy lifestyle. So for the past, good geez, going on 6 years now, Team ABA has worked with clients from various levels. So when we kind of go back to why it's really important to precisely describe behavior, I cannot tell you how many times that we've had parents walk into our gym, or if we're working off site and we're talking to coaches and who brought us into to help correct some deficiencies they may have, we always get the ambiguous term, which will kind of like terms that will kind of go into it a little bit. I want my kid to be aggressive. I want my kid to have, a strong mindset. So, of course, like, as we all know, the next retort from my mouth or any of my teammates' mouths are, what does that look like? Kind of tell me, like, describe that. Just like if you can visualize it and if you can count it, describe what that looks like for me, because that's going to help me help you. So again, we get those terms constantly from our clients or just people that are seeking help. So that's the first step in, and of course, like, being able to put our clients in positions to be better. So
Absolutely. And then when we define those behaviors, we use what is called a pinpoint or pinpoint plus. So I'm going to give what is commonly used as an academic example. A lot of times parents will say, "Oh, my kid knows their ABCs." Well, what does that precisely mean? Because knowing your ABCs, or what one thinks of as knowing someone's ABCs, can look like a lot of different things. Does that mean that they can see and say letters? Does that mean that they can think of letters and say them out loud? Does that mean that they can hear them and write them down? So we need to define how these behaviors look like so that when we're measuring it, we can all agree on what we're measuring, and then we can see it also changing in frequency. We can see that as we measure it. So it's all together. So one of the things we have is the learning channel. So let's say in this example of seeing or knowing their ABCs, we say we want them to see and say the letter. And we want that movement cycle, which is a clear observable action verb with an object receiving the action. So says letter. So see and say says letter. And then the context within which that occurs is the teacher points to the letter, or the letter that the teacher points to. So now we have a clear way to identify and measure behavior. Now, it's really problematic when we have these ambiguous terms like Kirk was just talking about. For me, growing up playing basketball, my parents and my coach would always say, "I need you to be more aggressive. I need you to," and I never knew what that meant. Does that mean going down the lane and punching somebody? Does that mean backing them down every single time I get the ball? What does that look like? So not only for the player, but for the coach, we need to define it precisely. What do you think, Kirk?
yeah, it's so like, great point as far as taking it from the academic side and then now swinging it over to the athletic side. And again, just like, how it's important to understand like directives. So we know that in sports, there is a player and a coach, and the coach is usually giving instructions. There's some sports that the coach cannot give instructions during game time, like tennis or sometimes like, like in golf, like they can't give that immediate feedback or so. So when we started a relationship and started establishment of defining behavior specifically, especially when we work with youth, because the youth sports, they're learning the game. They're learning the foundations of the game. So like, they have a whole lot of, stimuli. They're entered into this new environment for them, especially if they're playing, for the first time under a whistle and under, a controlled environment, like a structured basketball game or structured football game. So when we create these pinpoints, and I was going to get into a story about kind of talking about creating pinpoints. I don't want to jump ahead of you there, Jared, before we start talking about the pinpoints, but utilizing pinpointing is extremely important for us, because now it allows us to put this microscope under what could possibly be the problem. And then especially when we break down these three components of a pinpoint, we can now start to identify the specific function or specific problem, and then now hone into it there. So Absolutely. But Jared, if you want to go on and continue about explaining the pinpoint, just the components, I could kind of talk about, how that relates into real life methods that we have used to work with athletes.
Perfect. Yeah, because one of the things, we have all these sensory ins and outs for the learning channel, which is the first part of the pinpoint. And right now I'm showing the academic, personal, social learning channel matrix, but also we can create a channel matrix for different sports. Like for instance, when you're swimming, a lot of when you're swimming, you have to have these cupped hands. In competitive diving, you have to have different, forms and shapes, and you have to do different things. And with different sports, you're gonna have to hear different signals. Like I know that when someone's running the 100, they gotta make sure they don't do a false start, but they have to go when the gun goes. So we have to identify what are these things that people see and do that we want them to see and do, and what do they look like. When we say Shaq is the most dominant NBA basketball player of all time, what went into that? Why do we say that? What does that look like? We need to really put that magnifying glass on it, like Kirk was talking about, so that we can really make sure that we're measuring it correctly. Yeah, I think that's what I was really going with the learning channels. But Kirk, if you have anything else that you want to say about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about like the practical application of the three components of a pinpoint there. So we're talking about the learning channel, and how we take in information, and then what happens after we process it, and moving on to the next component. And then of course the movement cycle, just like the action that is going on, and then the context where all of this is happening. And I want to kind of explain, in a quick little story about, like how important this is as far as these three components of a pinpoint. We were brought in a couple of years ago to work with a football team, a high school football team that recently went from the traditional way of calling plays from the sideline. If you ever played high school football, like I'm showing my age, I played high school football in the 80s. Okay. And you would rotate a back in, and the coach would like whisper to the back, or his substitute, what the play was, and he would deliver it to the quarterback. Quarterback would deliver it in the huddle, and you run the play. So this particular team, high school team, went from that traditional way of translating information to now signs that they would hold up on the sideline, and then also hand signals. So there were two different ways of communicating information to the team and the quarterback, because they wanted to kind of play on a little bit of up tempo, and not slow the ball game down. So the quarterback, who happened to be a senior coming back and played like 2 years within the program of varsity, was used to the old way, but was struggling in reading the signs, reading the hand signals, and then executing the play correctly. So I was brought in, and from just like, the assessments that we were doing, I immediately went to pinpointing, and I was like, let me start with the learning channel. How are you receiving the signs? Like, so we just took him out of the environment of the practice field, and we started to go with correct and incorrect, after we started to shape up the like understanding, making sure that he understood the differences between certain plays. And then we started to put it onto, a frequency timing on just asking him, what the plays are versus like, what the signs correlating with the actual play. So then once we got to reached our goal, we put him into the practice environment and started recording from there. So now Now we move on to the movement cycle because basically it's just like the slide here. It was see say. We use see say because he's looking at the sideline, he sees the sign, and then now he has to relay that to his huddle, to his teammates. So see say is our learning channel, and we start to kind of be in the huddle to make sure to shape him up, making sure he's being corrected while and then putting him on his frequency drills they're testing. And then the movement cycle is to actually execute the play. So the movement cycle kind of changed, right? So like whether it be a handoff, whether it be a belly play where he has to read the defense, whatever the movement cycle changed from various plays. So we identified different movement cycles and then recorded and saw the progress of acceleration, the learning portion of it. Now it comes down. Here's the $64,000 question, and this is the nitty gritty. This is where performance has to increase because the context, of course, that we know is extremely important. Practice situations are a little bit more controlled. There's not any anything that the environment is creating where that's going to affect any type of performance where you're just in a closed practice with your teammates executing. So once we get to in the context that we can get to a base where he is fluent here, now we're taking it into game time performance. The context change. The stakes are higher. Okay, so there are some serious consequences to getting the play correct and or incorrect there. So again, utilizing this in a real world situation to basically affect the performance of a quarterback that is driven plays, because if he's going the wrong way and the play is supposed to go to the left and he's going to the right, obviously we start to see some problems there. Just a side note there, he was able in the time that we got with him in spring ball to opening day to get extremely fluent in running the offense from the new system play, and they went to the playoffs for the first time in his 3 years of playing varsity. So he had a pretty good season. So we were pretty happy about the results that we were able to help for this football team.
Perfect. That's a great example. And then I think Sal has a question in there. I don't know if you got a chance to see it, asking about channel wrapping. Like for instance, see here say for a football play when the sideline uses cards and also communicates to the player verbally. Have you seen any decrease in latency for the play calling because of channel wrapping?
Yeah, so like we started off with once we went from individual interaction to his frequency activities and all. When we did channel wrapping in certain situations, from going from individual to practice there, we started to see a little bit decrease in the play call. So like the plays, from the time that the coach would hold up a sign, and just to take in some more context, the team would put up a sign that is going to be the correct play, and then another sign, the dummy sign, which is going to be like a dummy play. It's not the play that they're going to run. Because some teams might start stealing the signs and all. So there was at first a gap in latency into understanding what's going on and all. But we started to see a decrease in the latency there, especially when we utilize channel wrapping. So yeah, so great question on there. And again, channel wrapping a very useful tool in terms of really speeding up the understanding of, and I'm sometimes I'm still used to calling them learners, athletes, to get them to the point where we need them to be.
And I would say that they're still learners, they're,
Yeah.
always right. They're also learning how to change the frequency of the behavior through hopefully our coaching and their repeated reinforced practice and feedback, which we'll get into. So yeah, great question, Sal. So after we define the behavior, then we got to count how many times the behavior is occurring. We need to identify the number of times the behavior persists before we can make changes. We need to know where we started, and we need to count the same way every time. So we record the number of times the behavior occurs per minute, per day, per unit of time. We don't like to use sessions because sessions can be different numbers of time every time. They might not last the same length. Some sessions might be shorter. It can really mess up our data collection procedures by not using consistent and standard units, such as units of time, such as per minute, per day, per hour, or maybe you're doing 30-second timings or what have you. But you want a little bit of consistency there with just the way that you're counting. And then you want to also remember the fair pair rule, where when you're counting something that you want to decrease, you want to also count something that you want to increase. So, like if you have a player that's not passing well, you want to make sure that you're identifying what a good pass looks like and counting those good passes as well, because you could have good passes going up, but bad passes could still be going up as well. I think that one of the good examples of this is Kobe Bryant later on in his career was taking a lot of shots to get a lot of points. So it was making his overall shots higher, but he was still getting a lot of points, which kind of could get him in trouble situations during the game, because maybe it's like, we need you to not miss so many shots so we can have a bigger discrepancy in points away from the opponents, or to be able to have more points than our opponents, because it's taking too many shots to get too many to go in. So counting those fair pairs are important. And when we measure, we want a visual display, and we use the standard acceleration chart. We'll show some actual charts that we've used later on, but I'm just going to show this one right here for now, because Precision Teaching uses the standard acceleration chart to display data, and frequencies can range from 1 per day to 100 per minute on this particular chart. And this is the gold standard of measuring rate of change, and we like to place our data on the SCC daily. Now, here's where we might run into one of our limitations, which we will also talk about later on, is that it's difficult to get daily data from athletes. You need rest. Also, if they're student athletes, they have a lot of competing contingencies. So it's like, if their parents can't drive them to practice, they might not be able to record. If they don't own any, cameras, and they can't get to practice, then they might not be able to record the performance to send to you. So there are limitations in those regards when it comes to daily data. But the more data we have, the more we can work with to identify changes and what's working and what's not.
And then also, like really quick, it's more intrinsically motivating for athletes to when you're asking them to do independent data collection. Like it a lot of times, it slips their mind because they're going in to really work on whatever their craft is, no matter if they are basketball players, swimmers, or so. Like it becomes really difficult, that we find some of the limitations that we find when we ask for them to independently record data is like, like if they really had a good practice, like, man, like coach, I hear this all the time, coach, I was in the zone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, well, how can I tell if you were in the zone if you're not recording your performance and all? Yeah, coach, I like, I was just feeling it. I just kept one, so yeah, so like we'll kind of talk a little bit about the some of the limitations that we have found in that, and showing it from display off of the chart. But there's so many considerations when we talk about collecting data there.
Yeah. And then the final of the four is try again. We never give up. After we've defined, detected, counted, and charted and changed the behavior, we think about what's going right and what's going wrong. Just because one thing that we didn't work doesn't mean that we stop. Some interventions for some people might work, and for other people, those same interventions might not work. And at the same time, an intervention might not work twice for the same person. So we want to try something new and go back to record and see if the changes we make are getting the behavior to go in the right direction. I mean, when we have this really sensitive display of data system, then we can really see what's going on and how changes in our interventions, in our coaching, in our methods is changing the behavior of players. There's like, if anybody knows who Sean Marion is and how he shoots, I wish somebody could have stopped and changed that shot because it just looks so terrible. I wish I put a video in here now, but it's an ugly shot. So there's this thing some people know, some people don't know about, which is called the taxonomy of learning. And I really want to focus on this psychomotor column because it really pertains to sports performance in a lot of ways. And when we talk about psychomotor learning, we talk about how to move our muscles in a precise way. And it has a basic unit, which are responses, which most behavior analysts and precision teachers know about. It's the activity of living organisms. It's how we move through space. It's also sometimes our inner thoughts, feelings, and urges. These are responses, and then chains are built up of multiple responses in a specific sequence that's the same every time. And then when we get to the kinesthetic repertoire, which it's multiple responses and chains of response occurring, matching environmental factors. So when Kirk was earlier talking about having those plays having to be able to be heard and used correctly in actual game performances, this is where that kinesthetic repertoire is going to show up. We want to be making sure that they're able to use what they've learned through those chains and those responses to move through different environmental factors, such as, different players that are on the field that are not on their team, maybe that they have to maneuver around to be able to score however that score looks like, whether in soccer, football, basketball, field hockey, what have you. And they can be guided by internal kinesthetic stimuli or external stimuli, such as how it feels when you hit a golf ball, and also seeing if that golf ball sliced or if it went into the right direction, or if you landed in the sand like I have done a few times.
Like we all have done.
Yeah, I mean, that bunker.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're learning psychomotor skills, we can't acquire them just by observing other people. We need to actually perform the response or the chain or the kinesthetic repertoire. So this means that simply telling is not teaching. There needs to be more. There needs to be an opportunity for our players to engage in the response, so that we can not only see them do it right, but they can also feel them doing right, so they can see the changes in the environment because of that correct form or shape of behavior or chain. And when we're learning psychomotor skills, like I said, we learn by doing. So here's me practicing between the legs to the left, then to the right of the cone, and then single dribble up to the rim, dunk. And I practice that so that I can use that chain in a game. Now, when I'm in a game, there might be players, over here under the rim that I have to also maneuver around. So those are environmental factors that my kinesthetic repertoire is going to need improvement on to be able to get around to have improved sports performance.
Hey, Jerry, can I give you a little feedback on the video?
Yeah.
I said, so that is an excellent hip switch. So a hip switch, everyone, is his change of direction. He's actually moving his hips from straight on downhill to the basket to the right hand side. Excellent hip switch there. What I would do just in general to make that even more explosive, and we always talk about getting you to jump higher and all, is to
Mm-hmm.
get into what I call the third position. There's three positions of in basketball, but at third position, which is a lower position, to engage, like, kinetic energy from toes all the way up to where it really counts, that
Hmm.
waist area, to get that spring there. But that's an excellent hip switch, man.
Oh, thank you. You're absolutely right. I wish that I had more of that feedback when I was younger and my knees really worked. Because now, I mean, that was like 2 years ago. I'm struggling. um, so repeated independent practice is not always enough. We also need learners to have that feedback from their internal kinesthetic feedback and from the external environment. So this is an example of Mr. Miyagi teaching Daniel's son exactly how he wants him to wash. Now, he was doing it incorrectly, and he gives him a prompt and feedback on how he wants it to look so that it is in the correct form. And this is one of the big things in coaching and feedback. So this is telling is not enough. I wanted to show you how I want you to do it. Then I want you to do it. And I want you to do it repeatedly. So that's one example. And the purpose of good coaching is, to teach and improve the form or quality of the psychomotor response. Good form is clear when learners display good coordination and timing when performing psychomotor movement. The two require the brain to initiate a smooth sequence of nerve impulses which fire the muscle cells at the right time in the right order. Good form will look smooth and continuous, and clearly Charles Barkley will need more coaching to achieve this. The purpose of good coaching is to improve the form or quality of the psychomotor response through feedback to the performer, either during or immediately after the response attempt. As learners become available to attend to relevant feedback, their performance improves. And some feedback is better than others. Saying, bad form, Chuck, is not going to be as good as some other feedback that will help him get that little hitch out of his giddy up.
Yeah, yeah. And really quickly, just to kind of piggyback on the importance of coaching feedback, I we cannot, you know, leave out the importance of identifying, like, the core skills, foundational skills that are needed uh, in order to perform, no matter what it is, whether it's a breaststroke, shooting foul shots, or not swinging a golf club like Charles Barkley here. So, it's important. We use internally at Team ABA a composite component analysis where, we're identifying some of those tool skills, and from tool skills, component skills, composite skills there, to learn how we're going to teach that particular athlete some of those core skills, especially like leading up to good coordination there. So, like, I wanted to make sure that we put that little blurb in there as we go along.
Thank you. I really wish I put that in here. I just taught that to one of the classes I was teaching at Penn State, and I brought up Dr. Binder's work and everything, and we
Shout out to
talked
Dr.
about
Binder in the
tools, among
building
stuff.
too.
Yep. Oh man, I should have put that in there, but I think our presentation would have definitely gone over the hour. So I appreciate that input. Good, good. So ultimately, the most relevant feedback that is applicable in real situations is when a coach is not assisting, and it's the feel of one's own body and muscles when movement is made with good form. Getting learners to attend to their own muscles by modeling verbal comments and physical guidance is how we can provide some of the best coaching. Getting learners to attend to that internal kinesthetic feedback characterizes the best coaching. After approximation of good form is achieved, then appropriate practice is required. Coaches should always be trying to shift the learner's attention to the more relevant kinesthetic feedback. And this is a video of Steph Curry. We're gonna get back to Steph Curry because I think this is a great example. Because he had this video of him shooting 105 three-pointers in 5 minutes, and I put it on the standard acceleration chart because I was really interested in seeing what it was, and it ended up just being 20 for each minute, 20 shots per minute made, and it just looked like a straight line on the standard acceleration chart. So I was like, oh, this is too boring to show. But but
That's
I
what you
think
want. That's what we want. We want a
yeah,
flat line. We talk about that internally here. We like if we have charts that are just flat line and they're hitting their aims, we've done our job. So yeah, so
yeah.
like no matter how boring it is for chart share, like that's what we want, guys. That I like, I will show at the next chart share, I will show flat lines all day long because I'm doing my job.
There you go. In sports performance, that's a really good point. In sports performance, when we're hitting that goal and aim and we're maintaining for long periods of time, that's important. That's good, especially when it goes into in-game performance, and we'll talk about that. So like we talked about, if a learner emits a response that is incorrect, we can model the correct form. We can give them verbal feedback as to how to get closer to the correct form, and we can use physical guidance to move their body in the correct way. We want to provide this feedback to the learner during or immediately after the response when we can. The learner's performance improves when they attend to that relevant feedback. So yeah, what was I going to say? This one. When the learner is able to take coach's feedback and attend to the internal kinesthetic feedback provided by their own muscles, they can begin to approximate good form. So, this is Happy Gilmore starting off getting coached and then being able to do it himself because he was able to attend to how his body feels as it moves through space. So, getting back to Steph Curry, one of the things about Steph Curry, one of my favorite players, kind of biased because I'm a Warriors fan, but you see him a lot take shots from the three-point line and beyond, and then he just looks away and he runs back on defense because he knows it's going in, and it goes in just about every time. And this is because he has such great attention to his internal kinesthetic feedback of how it feels to shoot the ball. He doesn't have to look. We usually us humans need to look at the rim and the response to also get that external kinesthetic feedback to see, okay, what I did caused the ball to go in, so I need to do what I did, so let me go back to attending to that internal kinesthetic feedback. This man is out of this world when it comes to that response, so he doesn't need to look anymore. He's just totally, I can feel it.
Can I add to that, Jared?
Yeah.
So, and that's absolutely correct. So, what we've identified, and again, shout out to Dr. Rick Abita in some ongoing research that we do on shooting fluency. We've identified just from the amount of data that we've gotten from different age groups and different levels, from middle schoolers to professional ball players. The most important part that allows Steph Curry, like, to kind of put it into more layman's terms there, and how it relates to basketball. When we talk about from the start of getting ready to shoot, it's called a loaded position. It makes sense, like you're shooting, you're loading up a gun. So you're basically, what that looks like is like, you're in a hunched position, bent knees, and it's varying points from different, aesthetics, from aesthetics to like how it feels for each player there. Not everybody has the same, positioning in that load position. From load position, you bring the ball up to set point, right? So things occur between that loaded position to set point, right? So we have learned from extensive like research and working with shooters, that shooters can now identify, like a la Steph Curry, if that ball is going in before it's even released. Okay, so the misconception is, well, Steph knows it from the as soon as the ball leaves his fingers there, that's when he knows that it's going to go in. No, contrarily, he knows from the sequence from his loaded position to set point in the rhythm, that understanding the rhythm, just like what Jared's talking about. Like the understanding that rhythm, if that rhythm is on, everything else now becomes like, it just goes to fluency. I've done the hard part. I've caught the rhythm. I caught everything in rhythm, and then now as my release, I know it's good there. So it's an important part of, like, our research is how do we teach this rhythm, to effectively make better shooters there. So I think that's just like, a really great point that I wanted to add on to, just like kind of like, again, the tool skills that go along into being a fluent shooter like Steph Curry. But these are once in a generation talent there anyway. So
Yep, exactly. Thank you for that. That's
yeah.
exactly the point of attending to that internal kinesthetic feedback. So we talked
Mhm.
a lot about all these things. Let's see some charts.
Yep.
So tell me about this chart, please, Kirk.
All right then. So let's talk about like this chart as far as in our infancy. So myself and my partner in Team ABA, one of my partners in Team ABA, Dr. Natalie Parks, we worked with our very first clients that we worked with, was a high school basketball team, actually her alma mater in St. Louis, Missouri. I spent 4 months for the whole entire season in St. Louis, relocating basically there. So this particular shooter here, at the time, was a 11th grader. Sorry, 11th grader. He was the leading scorer on his team that was really a bad basketball team. And the coaches identified some of the, points that the reason why they brought us in to work on them, some of the key points that we needed to work on. This particular chart was for free throw shooting there. So one of the things that we've learned over the years is, and for all the scientists in the building, I'm not saying this, because like, just to knock scientific design or so. We're, like in this case, we're practitioners. Sometimes I have to put on my scientist hat. Sometimes I have to put on my practitioner coach's hat. I've been brought in to make someone better. So as you can see, there is no phase change line of a baseline or anything. We are just looking at what you can do off the rip. Okay. And we're going to kind of like, like give you that feedback. So this was one of our early charts here. So as you can see, like let's kind of take a look a little bit at like, the progressions here. And feel free to kind of like, I always want to like, bring in feedback on some of these things, because we learned so much in this chart, like, from this chart that I think was done in 2018. When was it? 2019? Yeah, to
Yeah,
like
1819.
1819 there. So we've learned so much in this time frame, right? But our phase change line here, acceleration aim, we put in the acceleration aim for our shooter there. And this particular shooter, the previous year, I believe he shot under 47% from the line. Okay. So this is all practice data. Okay. So we put in our first phase change was putting in acceleration line. Okay. So you start to see some improvement here. Okay. So you see some gradual improvement, because at the end of the day, what we've learned, is that with shooters, okay, we're not going to see the times two, like acceleration with most shooters there. If we're seeing times two in anything, it is a kid that has probably never picked up a basketball, or rarely picks up a basketball. And then with our coaching and our consistent charting, we'll start to see some higher accelerations. Okay. So we start to see some gradual change. I mean, anything over a 1.25, we're cooking with some grease here. We're doing something here. So when we look at the second phase change that we implemented in here, so we start to give feedback because like the way that we set up this particular free throw shooting drill is that they're shooting, and obviously we can all see the timing of where what we have on our chart here, but we had feedback, various feedback from the players, like again, like I'm in this zone. I'm feeling it. I don't want to to stop, coach. I want to keep going. Why do you have to put us on this protocol where we're going to be like 1 minute off, and then get back to shooting? I just want to just keep shooting. I want to keep shooting. And then some others were feeling a little bit fatigued. So this particular shooter, he was getting a little bit fatigued. I'm sorry, he wasn't getting fatigued. He was one who was giving back the that I just want to keep my form. I want to keep going. So we implemented, instead of his rest period, that we had him on the side, just like shooting, continuously shooting against the wall, working, understanding his form, getting like understanding the feedback that we're giving him while he's doing the sequence on the side before he goes to shoot. So we've implemented that to see if there was going to be some change. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough data from there because like the coaches were implementing at the time during their playoff run, times that we decreasing our times we're working with the players there because they were getting ready for their playoff run and things of that nature. But it was always interesting to see if that particular intervention was going to show a steadily improvement. But in the long run, this particular kid increased his free throw shooting percentage almost like 18% from the previous year. So, again, when I talk about that, for as practitioners, we always want to like as precision teachers, we always want to see the efficacy of our interventions. But at the end of the day, we're putting on the coaching hat. So, if the chart is telling us to go a different direction, the chart's going to tell us to go in a different direction. But, it's our fundamental job to put them in the right position as quickly as possible.
Perfect. And we only got 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to speed through these last ones so we can actually also get to questions. So,
That's
put
my
some questions
fault.
in the chat. It's okay. It's okay. I, also dallied, but I think this chart, if I could just explain the fact that it's like when we have players that are athletes, we don't always have consistent data. We're not always able to collect consistent data daily or as often as we might want. So that can really screw up our data collection procedures. And then one thing that I found is when I did a chart on my inner behavior, when I was counting positive thoughts and when I was getting to my aim, and once I got to my aim, I actually noticed an increase in confidence on the basketball court, and that improved my skills and my performance playing basketball. So I go to like the YMCA every Tuesday and Thursday at 5:30 to go hoop with the guys, and it was so clear that my performance was different. There are players that like I have been playing with that asked for my number so that we could also play at different times at different locations because they wanted me to come squad up with them because my performance had changed. And the only thing I had done, I mean, I like to attribute it to this because it's the only change that I made. I wasn't going out there practicing more, putting up more shots. This is the thing that changed. So I think that when we talk about a player not having confidence, a la getting the yips or like Ben Simmons or somebody who is playing differently because they don't seem like they have confidence, I think inner behavior and working on improving, positive thoughts about them. Because I particularly thought about positive thoughts like I'm a good dribbler, I'm a good shooter, I'm a good driver, I'm a good dunker. Like I would have these things as part of my positive thoughts about myself, and then they transferred to performance on the court. So I think that this is somewhere that we should look into helping athletes with as well.
Shout out to Abigail in the building as well.
Yep.
Your pioneering research on inner behavior and charting it. Has a profound effect on what we do here at Team ABA. So shout out.
Exactly. And then so we were talking about limitations as well. Some of the limitations that we have or that we've seen so far are, inconsistency with data collection for student athletes, the need for more communication between precision coaches and teachers across companies, organizations, and universities. We need to identify fluency aims for different sports-related performances. There's a dearth in precision teaching literature in sports performance across sports. So not just in precision teaching, but also like for, typically for any individual that's trying to have, the highest level sports performance they can. We want to see those performances improve, and we need to see some data on it, some research. There's not enough also dissemination about precision coaching and what Team ABA is doing and what some other individuals in the field are doing. There needs to be more talk about that. I think I saw Andrew Bullock come in. Lots of thesis and dissertation ideas. Exactly. Andrew Bullock was able to show adduction with juggling soccer ball by practicing different components, and I think that deserves. You're fine. That deserves its own thing. So I think that information about these things can really gain curiosity, and it can really help us reduce some of these limitations and generate questions and better performance. I don't know if you had any other limitations, Kirk.
No, I think you explained it very well. There's a plethora of limitations that we've identified here, and we're still learning. This field is growing, it's rapidly growing, and it's our job to disseminate, not only behavior analysis, but more importantly, the importance of precision teaching, precision coaching, to the coaches, the athletes, athletic directors, GMs, players, because it's a more exact way of measuring, and we find it such a helpful tool in making decisions. So yeah, we're again continuously learning, each and every day. And we do want to get more research out there because it's extremely important.
Yes, and I see that Dr. Calkin is saying that I need to talk to, or one of us, we both need to talk to Kim Graff. I was just on Steve Graff's website.
We were just talking about
I
that.
was like, I've never seen this. Look at all these charts. I was just nerding out because I was like, this is so awesome.
And actually, if because I know Abigail probably weigh in on this. Probably I believe just I don't know if this is a fairy tale or so, a wise tale, but the first research done, or first charting done on athletic performance was Steve Graff, Dr. Graff, charting, I believe, his daughter catching a softball or something like that. Is that please let me know if that is true or not. You can chime in the chat. But that would be great information.
Agreed. And if there's any comments, questions, please put them in the chat as we're wrapping up. If anybody needs for me to go to the sign-in QR code, to the checkout QR code, let me know. But yeah, this was our presentation. We're really happy that so many of you all were able to join. I'm Jared Van. That's Kirk Kirby, Team ABA Team ABA University. Thank you to the Standard Acceleration Society for having us and hosting us. We're happy to share. It was Steve Graff I'm seeing in the chat. He has an archive of it at Youngstown U.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah. We're gonna go look at that. And Drew, go Birds, go Phils.
I'm gonna go back to check out the checkout code. Perfect. Yeah. And I think that there's so many different ways that we can improve sports performance we have barely scratched the surface, especially when it comes to charting behavior and identifying highly fluent behaviors. I would really love some free fluency aims for different things, especially related to basketball, because I'm all about basketball. But across different sports, if we had these fluency aims, we can really have, goals for these kids that we're working with. Becoming a better shooter is, of course, a goal, but it's not precise. How does that happen? What does that look like? How many shots do I have to make or shoot even to get there?
Yeah. And really quickly, I'll fail to, if I didn't mention this, if anyone is interested, I have a volleyball player. He actually does some coaching. He's out here right now in our gym. He's interested in some high level measurements for his recruiting. He's an interesting sort that he's able to plays volleyball at a high level, but he's also a basketball player. So he's being recruited, for two different sports, but his passion is in volleyball there. So he came to me and he was like, Coach, this precision teaching stuff is so interesting and all. I'm looking for some higher level measurements that I can include in my profile that I can when coaches ask for visits and stuff like that I can include in there. So if anybody's interested, like Jerry, you can go back to our card with where you can reach out to us. Reach out. I'd love to collaborate on this particular kid.
Yep, exactly. And thank y'all for joining. If there's any questions, you can contact Team ABA. You can contact us, and we're happy to help talk about this stuff. We're passionate about it, clearly. So, and we look very in depth into it, and we hope y'all will join us, looking in depth into sports performance and improving athletic performance through dropping dots.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
See you at the conference.